right at the very beginning when you have to decide whether or not to accept a resume. So Marianne Bertrand and Zendil Mullainathan did this great study. They're behavioral economists, and they took two resumes, right? They basically made them the exact same resumes, but they just changed the names on them. Now, you know what Lakisha means. You know what Emily means. And even though you have the exact same zip code and same background, nothing else to say it, when you see Lakisha, your mapping rule says, this is not a white person. Not a white person, right? Like Dakota is a white person, but Lakisha is not. No, I mean, there are good mapping rules on this. We're actually very good at this. We're very good at this. And it turns out just that little deviation sent out to real employers in two different cities, right? African-American named Vitas, CVs, were 50% less likely to be called back for interviews simply because of that change. A guy named Ruth does the same thing out in Sweden, but sends out either Swedish-sounding names or Arab Muslim-sounding names, and he confirms these results and says that Arab Muslim-sounding names were 3 times less likely to be interviewed, even though the resumes were identical. He goes back and finds almost a quarter of the managers who actually made the recruiting decision, and he wants to try to figure out, like, what was driving that? Like, are you just a racist pig? Well, why? Why? He looked for correlations. He asked them questions. What do you think about Arabs? What do you think about Muslims? There were no correlations on explicit self-reports based on survey. There were no correlations even between implicit attitudes, like versus dislike. What actually they found was that there was an implicit stereotype about work ethic, that Muslims and Arabs actually work less hard than Swedes. And it was that stereotype, measured by this silly video game, that predicted, for example, if you were 1 standard deviation away from the mean, a 12% reduction in interview probability. I know standard deviation, all that stuff, there are reasons why you went to law school, but this is meant to be just gestural, and you should be very skeptical of everything I say, because maybe I'm just making stuff up. I want to convey the gist of the literature, and then if you want to actually push back and know the details, we have to go to deeper sources. But it sounds like resume sorting, even at the name level.